Mike's on Mike, a conversation about politics, government, and Jacksonville, with 50-year opinion leaders Mike Hightower, Mike Tolbert, and award-winning broadcaster and longtime political observer, Mike Miller.
Welcome to another episode of Mike's on Mike. I'm Mike Miller, along with Mike Hightower in studio, and Mike Tolbert, of course, is back at his remote studio. Today's podcast brought to you, as always, by our friends at the Jacksonville History Center and Dr. Alan Bliss, along with the fine donors who keep our lights on and our cameras rolling. Today's podcast is airing the last 2 days of 2024 and the first 5 days of the new year. Instead of looking back at what has happened in Jacksonville and in Florida back in the 2024, we thought instead we would look ahead and try to predict and give you our insights into some of the things that might happen in 2025. Of course, we realize that a lot could happen in 2025 that we don't know about today, but we'll take it as it comes and roll with it and hopefully talk about it on future podcasts, which we hope you'll be tuned into. Mr. Tolbert, go ahead and let's start it off.
Well, I want to begin with something that happened, I heard happen in mid-December that I think is going to have an impact going forward in 2025. And I really want Mr. Hightower to share with us what he's heard, what he knows, and what it all means. Recently, we began hearing that a revolt broke out in the Duval County Executive Committee meeting when they had gathered in mid-December to elect a new chair and officers. Apparently, the Black Cats, what I've heard is the Black Cats who were in charge and had been for some time, people like Lenny Curry and Tim Baker and Brian Hughes and Dean Black, got punched in the nose when they tried to get their person elected chair. Mr. Hightower, what the hell is going on over there?
Well, I wasn't at the meeting. Let me say that. But I can tell you the rumors, third, fourth, fifth hand. The local executive committee, which is referred to as your local Republican Party, every 2 years they elect their leaders. Well, what happened was that group, who's been in charge for the last 6-8 years, since Curry was mayor, their guy lost. And when they lost, Mayor Curry and a number of those supporters and a lot of city councilmen who were there to vote for the incumbents got up and left. So what happened, not only did the new chair, who was not part of the old establishment, won, but all the people who were going to be the vice chair, the secretary, the treasurer, sergeant at arms, whatever, they all got up. Their votes walked out the door too. So there is not only, quote, a new sheriff a new person running the local Republican Party, but his slate of supporters are there. The new chairman, by the way, who is Mr. Charles Barr. It's really important that who understand Charles Barr. He ran for office against, I think, a Democrat. What I found out since is that the group that just got defeated, a perception as what it was led to believe, that those people helped his Democratic opponent. And the other thing is what his day job is, that he is a member of the Teamsters at Anheuser-Busch up in the north side, which, by the way, has almost 500 members. This is rumor. Rumor has it that at that meeting or at the city council meeting the next day, one of the elected officials told another elected official that they're going to do everything they can to make sure that Chairman Barr is not successful in these next 2 years so they can come and take over the party.
It's all about power and money, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, and
that's all it's about. It's about power and money and control. Absolutely. And I paid my baseball bet, and I'm going to go home now.
If that's what was said, I would suggest that, like the Democrats are doing, those city councilmen who supposedly made that comment, I suggest that you take a long walk and decide what you want to do, because that, until you kind of debrief how are you going to win again, you got to think through this.
Yeah.
Because there, as Mike Tolbert has said for years, there are consequences to elections.
Mm-hmm.
And this is one of those things, if they don't play this right, it's dumb as rocks.
Well, let me follow up on that because you're right. There are ramifications from every election. And speaking of elections, Ron Salem, I understand, was at the meeting that you were just talked about where this coup took place.
There were a number of city
council. Okay. But the reason I bring up Salem is because it's no secret that Salem has not been quiet about his aspiration to become mayor and wants to run for mayor, probably against Mayor Deegan. So my question is, now that those who he supported in the Republican Executive Committee have now just been thrown out of office, maybe you ought to call that, well, I'll go with that later. But the question is that going to now impact Salem? Because I'm assuming that Salem was supportive of Black and Hughes and Dina Black and Hughes and Tim Baker and that group.
Yeah.
So does that mean now that his candidacy could be in jeopardy if that group is not any longer leading the executive committee?
My initial reaction would be yes, but I'd be interested in hearing Mr. Tolbert because I think Mike has been through a lot of this and he understands that. What's your take on that, Mike?
Well, my take is that the Republican Party is lucky that its opposition is the local Democrat Party.
He's so right. He is so right.
Wouldn't that be a good, and wouldn't that result in wasting good political capital if they have?
Well, one thing we know for sure about folks like Tim Baker and Curry and Brian Hughes and those guys is they will do whatever it takes to win. They'll tear down whoever they have to tear down to get ahead of somebody. And I would not put it past them to try to deball this guy somewhere along the line, certainly probably sooner than later. That would be my observation.
Well, my second part of this question goes back to you, Mr. Hightower, and that is this. You have not really been engaged in the party for a while.
Right.
Okay. Now that we have seen this transformation, was this going to bring you back into the fold? Are
you like the short answer or the long answer?
Well, your short answer would be a long answer anyhow, so you might as well just give us your answer.
Damn straight.
You will be back involved.
I've already talked to Chairman Barr.
Okay.
Let's do some predicting now.
All right.
The one thing that always, obviously always interests me is the race for mayor of Jacksonville. And one of my predictions, and it's not hard to predict this, is that shortly after the first of the year, 2025, we'll see more and more talk and more people coming out on the Republican side who think they want to run against Mayor Deegan. We know that Salem is talking about it. We've heard of others. Who do you guys suspect might put their hat in the ring or be talking about putting their hat in the ring in the coming months?
I would say, if I can kick that off a little bit, based on what he said to the three of us on this program not too long ago, I think Jerry Holland is definitely going to run for election. He has already made the point that after he's termed out of his position now as supervisor of elections, that he's not finished and he wants to continue.
Well, he's not going to be termed out. He won't be termed out. About my understanding, he said he was not going to wait to be termed out. He was going to leave office early.
Okay.
To mount a campaign.
So and that may be even a stronger clue that he's going to be running in there. Who else do you think might go in there?
Again, this is fourth hand.
Of course.
Fourth hand. Believe it or not, I hear there's a group of people who are advocating for Rory Diamond. As I said, it was fourth hand.
That's okay. We'll take any hand we can.
I'd buy a ticket to see Roy Diamond run against Donna Deegan.
I think what's going to be very interesting among the Republicans is how many of them are going to be pitching tents outside of Mar-a-Lago looking to get the endorsement of the next president, because they're going to see that as the pathway to victory.
My sense is there's a new chairman. If you're thinking about doing something, I think you want to go have a good relationship with the new chairman of the local party. Just saying.
Yep. Tolbert, is there a dark horse in this thing that you can think of? Someone that no one's thinking about that you think might squeeze in?
Given right now, if the election were right now, say the election was this spring, how would you handicap a race between any of these Republicans we're talking about and Mayor Deegan? What do you think would happen if the race was in the spring of this year?
Never underestimate the power of incumbency is my preface to my answer. And I believe that when you take a look at the crossover vote that Donna Deegan received when she was first elected, and the job she's been doing so far as I'm concerned, there was a good article about it today, as a matter of fact, about two of her signature items, the pension issue of getting new hires into the Florida retirement system, and then, of course, the stadium deal, which she got across. Those are two very important pieces of legislation that she marshaled through.
Don't overlook the University of Florida Graduate School.
And that's the other one that's coming up too. You're right.
And then, one of my predictions is that if things continue like they are right now, we're going to see the Laura Street Trio back up and running before the end of 2025, I believe, since they have now apparently removed Steve Atkins as a developer without any involvement and have a new developer. They were supposed to get a new agreement by the end of this year, a purchase agreement with Atkins to release that. That includes a time to start construction. So if that all moves like it's supposed to, well, we may be, and that will be another feather in her cap. No question about it.
If you're going to run against this incumbent, you've talked about 3 or 4 things that she has accomplished. I guess the next question is, what as her opponent would be her elevator speech, correct, Tolbert?
Well, this is not any kind of genius at all, but it'll be the same thing that every candidate running against an incumbent runs on, and that's change. But you got to, at some time, you got to say why we need change, and sometimes that's not real easy. And it looks to me like the path that Donna's walking right now, the way she's doing right now, things are going pretty good, and that could all blow up in a heartbeat. Now we know that she's not going to have a favorable president sitting in the White House, so that could change.
Right.
But the message has got to be changed, and you got to have a reason to recommend change or to want change.
You got to find out what's going to change. What do you want to change?
How would you handicap her against any of the people that we have possibly heard or heard?
If the election was right coming up in the spring of 2025, I'd put all my chips in the middle of the table on Donna.
Speaking of rumors and third and fourth hand,
well, we're talking about colleges.
Exactly. And that is T.K. Waters getting involved in some way, our sheriff.
I've heard that.
Now, whether or not he would even consider running against an incumbent, I don't know. But I know from what I'm hearing, he's got designs on that part of downtown. And the question would be, would he wait for Donna to get her second term in so he's not running against an incumbent and has an open seat? Or does he think that she's vulnerable enough to jump in now and give up the sheriff's position?
I think it would be a lot easier for him if he waits another 4 years and has a good 8-year run and not run against an incumbent, but run against an open field.
Yeah,
But part of that question goes back to Mike Hightower, the boys that had their heads handed to them at that committee meeting are Waters guys.
Yeah.
So, does that handicap Waters because of what happened at that committee meeting? I mean, it's just like the circle shoot, a firing squad.
I've heard it from at least 4 of the big donors that if any candidate comes and talks to me about running for office, my question is going to be, who is your consultant? It's only been 4. Now, there were a lot of donors involved because there was, we know in the mayor's race, it was in almost, $11 million. But you've got then all the constitutional officers here, and you've got the city council. So if you add up all the money that's going to be needed to be asked from our donors in the spring by the time they run, I mean, we're talking in excess of $13, $14 million when you think about it, plus the primary. And if you've got the donors out there asking, well, who's your consultant? It kind of goes back to what Mike Tolbert just said. There's a lot of unknowns out there, and whoever is going to try to thread that needle, if and I will tell you, 2 of those 4 I talked about were really upset, not so much with the candidate in the mayor's race, but the tactics used by the consultant. And they were unhappy because it impacted their community.
But, that begs another question, and that is with what happened at the executive committee and the coup that occurred.
Changing of the guard.
All right, you can call it what you want.
I'm the Republican. Changing of the guard.
Okay. The question then is, how damaged are Baker and Hughes as a result of what happened at the executive committee, and will they have enough political juice by then to take on new candidates and be able to attract new clients?
Okay.
The answer is yes.
I don't know what I don't know. One, Brian Hughes, as you all know, has now been senior advisor to President Trump.
Yep.
So I think chances are, rumor has it, I mean, that's his role right now, is senior advisor to the president.
He's actually a spokesman for the transition.
Exactly. And he is, and my understanding from people down there, that Brian has done a hell of a job. You got to remember, Brian started out in South Florida as an aide to a congressman. So,
when I knew
out of nose.
That was Mark Foley, by the way.
Yeah,
the way from
so,
North.
So you sort of have to take him out of the equation. Kim Baker, I don't know. Lenny is now a consultant. He's a lobbyist of that.
Is he with Ballard now?
He's with Ballard, and then Alex is a consultant, but and again, I think right now we've got more fog than we have reality. But Brian is not a part. Brian is now in an extraordinary prestigious position. So I think that if you're senior advisor to the President of the United States, I think that's where your focus is at this point.
Okay. Let's talk about Washington for a moment here, okay? As we know this, I'm wondering at this time next year, do you guys think Susie Wiles will still be the chief of staff to the president?
Absolutely.
By next year at this time?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I'll bet you a steak dinner at Eddie Ruth's, Chris. I will bet you a steak dinner.
Wow. Well, I'm not sure I'm going to take the other side in that case. That's pretty expensive evening.
Well, let me tell you, I did a little research since our last meeting with Nate Monroe.
Yeah. Okay.
Which none of you all came to my defense, by the way, but that's okay.
You didn't need our defense.
Well, wait a minute now. But I want you to know it's a different ball game with this president. If you saw his press release, his press conference yesterday,
I did.
For over an hour, he was calm. He was humorous. It was classic Susie Wiles. Classic Susie Wiles. They even said that on some of the on the reports. Susie Wiles. So let me tell you, they are joined at the hip. He trusts her. There's loyalty there.
I think that there could be some friction between her and Stephen Miller, who, by the way, is not related to me in any way, because Stephen Miller was named as deputy chief of staff.
Now, there are 4 deputy chiefs of staff, 4 or 5.
Okay, but who has the president's ear more than Stephen Miller and Susie?
Well, one, Susie.
I say, besides
Susie has it.
I understand that, but will Stephen Miller try to go over Susie or around Susie to get to the president? And if he tries to do that, I'm wondering how long she'll be putting up with that.
She'll be there until Trump no longer needs her.
I just really believe that relationship. She was there through all of it, and they have worked out a relationship. And if you remember, it did come from here, but it was out there.
Mm-hmm.
He asked her to be his chief of staff, and she gave him, I will do it under these conditions, and he accepted. That's number one. Secondly, we all watched it. The night he wins, who's the first person? Well, I think it goes back to, will she be there? A year from now, she's still going to be chief of staff.
Okay, next one. The bromance between Elon Musk and Donald Trump. Is that going to continue for another year?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
I think
really
if Trump feels like he has an edge on Musk, then Trump will allow that relationship to keep going. I think the minute Trump feels like Musk is getting too much attention or getting too much of the pie, he might end it.
Governor DeSantis, is he our next secretary? Would he become Secretary of Defense if Hegseth can't make it?
He won't be. He will not be Secretary of Defense. He won't.
I have a different answer.
You think?
Pete will make it.
Guys, we're reaching the end here, but before we go, we have one last prediction I'm going to ask you, and that, first of all, to our audience, this is our 75th episode of Mike's on Mike, and thank you all for your support. Otherwise, we would never have made it this far. So my question to you two is, will we make it to our 125th episode, which means we would run through till the end of 2025?
My answer is if it's good, like Ernie Ford used to say when I was a kid, if the Lord's willing and the creek don't rise, I'll be back.
Yep. One of the reasons, I think, let's put it, it comes back to our supporters and Dr. Alan Bliss.
Right.
But I think, Mike, both of you all have made this in your comments about that. I think as long as it's about quality and we continue to have incredible guests like we've had, then I think there's an audience out there.
And most importantly, because this goes back to Tolbert, as long as we're always having fun.
There you go.
That's the bottom line.
Yeah.
By the way, Miller, did I tell you I talked to Mike Bender about replacing Hightower?
I think you said it when Bender was here, so it's not a surprise.
Hey, guys, this was fun. Thank you both very, very much. Thank you for the last year and a half that we've been together, and hopefully we will go for another year.
Yeah.
And thank you, those of you who are watching us on Facebook, on our website, on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, on all of the platforms where podcasts are available. We're glad that you're putting Mike's on Mike on there. And again, our thanks to Alan Bliss and to the Jacksonville History Center for their support, as well as the donors who keep us going.
Yeah.
We'll see you all again next.
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays, Happy New Year, Merry Christmas, Happy Kwanzaa, Happy Hanukkah, Happy everything. Just be well, and we'll see you again next time.
Have a great New Year.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks.
Mike's on Mike with Mike Tolbert, Mike Hightower, and Mike Miller can be found on your favorite podcasting platform, Facebook, and YouTube. Visit the website at mikesonmike.com. Join us next time for more conversation with Mike's on Mike.